Don't be zoning out on us and spinning around in your chair.
Don't be rolling your eyes in the back of your head. Don't be staring at the ceiling.
Welcome to the Pretense of Justice with hosts Carmen, Roland, Sonia, Tamika, and Demarcus, where we discuss legal and current events, controversial issues, and all things justice as we advocate for injustice. Let the justice begin. Okay, we are live.
Hello, everyone. This is Dr. Carmen Johnson. We're here at the Pretense of Justice. And tonight we have the wonderful Sonia Robinson that's joining us. We have Miss Tamika Christopher that's joining us. The famous Mr. Roland Carter joining us. Our moderator, Miss Rhonda, the director of our podcast that make this all happen. And we have the wonderful Mr. DaMarqus Moore. And I kick it on over to Mr. Carter.
All right. Good evening, everybody. Welcome to Pretense of Justice. And I want to jump right into our main attraction this evening is Brother DaMarqus Moore. So I want to give you a quick little bio on him. I was a dream come true, born into a teenage love story to Yolanda and Clinton Moore, two unbelievable people who together cultivated me upon good manners and a strong family foundation. My mother gave me the nourishing and good-hearted part of my character, and my father gave me the strong, loyal, and confident part. So growing up, I had the balance that every young Black man needed to be properly raised in this crazy society. However, nothing can properly prepare you for life and what's to come. Brother DaMarqus will share with us his story of how he got entangled in the criminal and justice system and how he got himself out. I now turn it over to you, Brother DaMarqus.
Well, before we do that, just real quick, let's let Sis Tamika read an excerpt from the book.
Okay.
Pretense of Justice.
Hi. Peace and love, everybody. So if you haven't gotten the book yet, please head over to Amazon and do so. It is a wonderful read. I'm on page 250. I haven't finished it yet, but I'm almost done. So with the subject that we're going to be going over today, which I'll let DaMarqus, go into it. When we were prepping for the show, it made me think about something that Elder J. Winter Nightwolf wrote. He is featured on page 39, and he left a beautiful, beautiful written statement in support for Dr. Carmen Johnson. So I'd like to read that part. And so it reads, "This is my written statement of support for Carmen Johnson's amazing effort of justice, fairness, and equality. My friend Floyd Fred Crow Westerman, a member of the Great Lakota Nation, before he walked on into ancestorhood, made an amazing, profound statement as follows. I would like to quote a prejudicial doctrine handed down by the Supreme Court in 1823. It said that Indian nations do not have title to their lands because they weren't Christian. That the first Christian to their lands, that the first Christian nations that discovered an area of heathen lands have absolute title. The doctrine should be withdrawn and renounced to establish a new basis of relationships, people and other peoples of the world. We as American Indian people have had to deal with more irrational nonsense from the European invaders and their descendants ever since they found their way into our pristine waters and bountiful homelands in the late 1400s. They found their way here and began to take. The only things they brought with them was their arrogance, greed, bad attitudes, their priests, and their Bible, with little or no regard for what we already had and what our belief systems had to offer. Sorry about that, y'all. We, the American Indian people, were placed here in the Western Hemisphere with one assigned mission appointed by the Great Spirit. That mission is to be the stewards of the lands, our grandmother, the earth. Often I am asked, why were these Europeans so mean, nasty, and hard on the American Indian? My answer was, and is always, God put us here, and they wanted what God gave us, our homelands. Their intent in the beginning was to make all of us Christians. Now that's the part that stood out to me. And you'll understand why I'm reading this part when Brother Demarcus talks about his journey and some of the stereotypes that he's faced, being independent in his religion. So their intent in the beginning was to make all of us Christians and followers of their concept of God. We had our own religions that they refused to respect. The indigenous peoples of the Western Hemisphere were introduced to Christianity at the point of the gun. They brought the same message they told our sisters and brothers. Your gods are no longer relevant, and you must stop worshiping them. You must worship our God, who is the God of love. Their desire was to totally exterminate the American Indian. After they attacked us and started their genocidal practices against us, killing our men, women, and children and babies, and our honored elders spoke up and asked, why do you want us to pray to your so-called God of love? That is your so-called God of love. That you are killing my people in that same God. Oh, hell no. You and your God are both hypocrites. This is the very same God that King Leopold of Belgium took into Africa and murdered millions of African people as well. And he says, thank you. And that is from Dr. Elder J. Winter Nightwolf. And I yield my mic. Pass it over.
Thank you. All right, Brother Demarcus, we're very, very excited to have you share your story with everyone. We feel it is very, very important, you being a young Black man, to share your journey. It's very, very inspirational. So with that said, brother, we will turn it over to you.
Okay, thank you. How everybody doing? And good evening. So just to pick up from the bio, like I said, I was what you was considered a dream come true. You know, my mother and father was actually together since they was teenagers, all the way up into their 50s. And, you know, they planned on having a son, they planned on having a daughter. And of course I have other siblings, but I'm the firstborn of the family. So I had already those nourishing and current factors. You know, my father was a teacher and my mother was a daycare provider. So certain things just came natural, certain little household mannerisms, certain characteristics, being respectful and things like that. That stuff come natural. But like I said, certain things can't prepare you for life. And that goes back into a conversation we had a couple podcasts ago about it taking a village. Because the neighborhood that I was raised in was a neighborhood that was mainly about murder, drug dealing, prostitution, robbery, just a whole bunch of crime. Like that's just what the neighborhood was about. So that's the area and air that I breathe. Like that's what I grew up in, and trying to mix in the principles that my father told me as far as loyalty, strength, being your own man, being an individual. So growing up in that environment, it was kind of hard trying to maintain doing the right thing or implementing those principles. Because when a person is in that type of setting, when he's not involved in what the majority of people is involved in, he normally falls victim to the society. And nobody wants to feel that type of way. Nobody wants to feel that type of way. I believe I was 9 years old the first time I ever seen someone get killed, like right in front of me, like just shot in his head and then burnt to fire, a crisp, like just right in front of me. Like it was just a normal day. And just saying it like happened so much. So it was so like, it was normal to engage in certain activities. And of course we grew up playing sports and things of that nature, but it wasn't too long after that when the sporting department got removed from our neighborhood and it was very few activities. So a lot of us turned to the streets because at that time it was either you turn to the streets and be with it or be a victim to it. So a lot of us turned to the streets, and unfortunately I had got caught up in a situation that it really wasn't, it could have been handled better in hindsight, but at the time that was the only way I knew how to handle the situation. So me and a friend was, walking one day, and he had got a phone call from a female that we know. And somebody was bothering this female. So she asked, can we come up there and just assist her in the matter? So as we got up there to see what was going on, it turned into a brawl. I ended up getting stabbed a couple of times. And then it just moved on to, okay, now I got to protect myself to what I know. So I ended up arming myself. And next thing you know, I was charged with first-degree murder.
So can I ask you just real quick, how old were you when this was jumping off?
At the time, I was 16.
Okay.
I was 16 years old at this time. Right. At this particular time frame right now, I was 16 years old. So once I got arrested, 16 years old, sitting up in Marlboro Detentional Center, awaiting trial, I guess you would say, my father had wrote me a letter. Now, like I said, my father was my strength. That was my backbone. And I'm saying was because, he passed away a couple years ago. But that was my strength. That was my backbone. So he had wrote me a letter. And in the letter, he was like, man, I felt like I failed you. I felt like I could have did more. I felt like if I have an opportunity where I can give my life just so you can have another chance at life, I need to give that up for you. So now in my conscience, I'm like, my father should never feel his way because he never did anything wrong. He always taught me the best of the best. Like you would never find the one who encountered me, whoever said I was a disrespectful person, whoever say I was considered a bad child. Like it was kind of like shocking to individuals once I got arrested. And that comes from a lot of the examples that my father put on me and that how my mother raised me. Like my parents spent a lot of time installing the proper mannerisms in me. So when he said that really hurt me. So I'm like, man, you know what? I know it's early. I know everybody, getting to have these moments. But if I don't do it for nobody else, I can't let my father down. I can't let my mother down. I got to get out of prison. But this is early on. And the Upper Marlboro Detention Center, they don't allow you to study no law. You have to already know it and request what you know. So there's no form of fashion where you can learn what you're going into. So you don't know. So you about to go to trial 16, and at the fast forward, when I went to trial, I actually turned 8. They held me from 16 all the way until I was 18 before I went to trial. So by the time I went to trial, I was already 18. I already been sitting 2 years. Now,
so can I just real quick just ask you, can you elaborate a little bit more when you say that they don't allow you to learn? Were they restricting you from like?
It's like the way they got it set up.
Mm-hmm.
The way they got it set up in that particular jail, you can't go in there and just study what's going on with the law. You can't study the Constitution. You can't study certain charges to see what it is you're actually being charged with. you have to already know these things and tell them, I want something on the 14th Amendment. I need to learn something about due process. I need to learn something about the 5th Amendment, my right to remain silent. I need to learn. You have to already know certain aspects.
know what to ask for.
Right. You have to know what to ask for. So if you don't know what to ask for, you can't just say, well, I don't know nothing about the law. I just want to go down there and study the law. They're going to say, I can't help. There's nothing you can do.
Okay.
So it's very unfortunate for an individual who's going through that situation and don't know nothing about the law, and he's not in a position where someone can direct him as to what you need to read and what not to read.
Okay.
So for those 2 years and going to trial, I didn't know nothing. Now imagine being 18, you facing life in prison for a misunderstanding, but that misunderstanding definitely cost somebody their life. But you facing life in prison and being judged by 11 people who don't know you. They don't know nothing about you. They don't know your character. They don't know your past. They don't know what you've been from. They don't know if this is a mistake, a misunderstanding. Was this intentional? Was this unintentional? They don't know any of these things. And you have a prosecutor who don't know you. And his job is to get you convicted. And then you have a lawyer whom we paid $25,000 who don't know you. But his job is to not get you convicted. So now we're courtroom with a whole bunch of people that don't know you and don't know the situation, but they got to pass judgment. They got to pass that judgment. So, of course, I end up losing the trial and going to a super maximum security jail at 18 years old. I end up losing the trial and got sentenced to life suspended at 85 years when my release date was supposed to be 2094.
Oh my God.
Yeah, my release date was supposed to be June 4th, 2094.
So were you originally going to be charged as an adult even at 16?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
Coming through the door, they charge you as an adult. And that's another thing. When you come through the door, they charge you as an adult and you have to be waived back down to a juvenile. But because of the seriousness of my child, they didn't even give me a hearing to see if I could have been waived as a juvenile. They just dismissed the hearing. So they just kept me charged as an adult.
And what took them so long? Why did you have to sit for 2 years without a trial?
Well, I don't know why, but for some reason, when you initially get locked up, it normally takes them about 6 months before they get you before they indict you.
Okay.
Normally. Now, once the indictment comes, they have something called the Hicks Day. The Hicks Day is the day where they have to take you to trial by this day. But another thing, for some reason, you always get your Hicks Day waived by the courts, whether it be on behalf of the state or behalf of your lawyer with some type of claim as to we need to find more evidence or we need more time to build our case, some type of legitimate excuse that they use to get that Hicks Day waived.
But you still get to sit and behind bars while they basically get their ducks in a row.
Right. When they waive the Hicks Day, they have up until who knows when they could. It's supposed to be 180 days, but when they waive your first Hicks Day, who knows when they are legally bound to take you to trial, because you had some people sitting down there for 4 years, like 4 or 5 years before they even went to trial. So, but of course I had lost trial, so I had got sentenced to life suspended over 85 years, and they sent me to a super maximum security jail in Cumberland. Security jail in Cumberland. My first day in that jail, as soon as I got in the jail, put my stuff in the room, took me a little nap just to calm myself down from that bus ride. We went to dinner. We came back from dinner. About 5 minutes after we came back from dinner, about 40 police had ran on the tier. They broke one of them big carts on the tier, and they rolled a dude out on the cart. The dude had some glasses on his face. His feet was tied up. So the police talking on the tier, and they asked him, what's happening? Because my cell was in the front. They're like, what's going on? They're like, man, we did count. We came around and did the institutional count for the last 3 days, and we noticed this dude was in the same position. sitting in the chair, hat on, glasses, holding cards in his hand. But he's been like that for the last 3 days in the same exact position. Whole time the dude been dead for 3 days.
Wow.
He's been dead for 3 days. So this is my very first day on it. So I'm like, dang, people really do die in jail. So I'm like, man, like we gotta figure this thing out. So probably about like a week after that, I had seen this older dude. He was talking to me. So he was like, man, what you into? I said, I don't understand what you mean. He said, listen, you're in prison now. I don't want you to join nothing or be a part of nothing. But when I mean what you into, what is something that you do to occupy your time? So I told him that I was Muslim. Now backtrack a little bit. Probably about a year before I had got arrested, I was having a conversation with my mother and father, and they Christians. And they asked me basically like, why don't I really take to Christianity? So I explained some of my gripes to them, some of the things that I didn't believe in, I wasn't firm in, like this just wasn't for me. So my mother and father, the type of people, they like, whatever you want to do, we're going to support you as long as you actually do it. The moment you start lollygagging, we're not supporting you no more. We're not going to be with that. You're going to have to figure it out. So I started reading around and researching different things because I've always been a religious person. And I started studying Islam. And there were so many things in Islam that agreed with my natural disposition, like I didn't second guess myself in believing in it. And one of the things that I had read, it's an ayah in the Quran when Allah says, "Marajal bahrain yaltaqiyan." He said, it is he who had let loose the two seas. He said, "Bayna khula baraza yabagiyan," and in between them there's a barrier, and neither one of them can transgress. So I looked into it, what that means. He's talking about where the salt water and the fresh water connects, and how neither one of them mixes, no matter how much the water splash, or how some fish can swim in both, or how some fish can even swim in one but can't swim in the other. So I'm like, wow, if the Quran was revealed over 1,400 something years ago, and they talking about something like this that scientists didn't come to find out 1,100 something years later, there's got to be something that come from God. This is a divine book. It couldn't come from nowhere else. And then there was so many other things like the transformation of the human being from the semen into the fetus, into how you were weak and then you become strong, and then we make you weak so you can glorify and stuff like that. So Islam is something that I trusted in. So I told him, I'm Muslim. He was like, man, stick to that and stick to your case. So I'm like, man, I don't know where the first place to start. He said, I'm gonna direct you to somebody to talk to. Go talk to them and, man, stick by their side. So he said, go in the library. Once you get in the library, you're going to see exactly who I'm talking about. So I went in the library. Of course, there's 15 people in the library. So I'm like, man, how am I supposed to pick out one out of the 15? So we sit in the library. So I'm talking. I'm reading a book. The first book I ever picked up was the Merlin Rules book. So I'm reading the book, trying to see if I see something familiar. And the older dude came to me. And he pulled me. He was like, man, what you looking for? I was like, man, I don't know. He said, so why you in here? I said, man, somebody told me come in here and somebody's going to help me out with my case, and I don't know who it is. So he started laughing. And he was like, man, such and such sent you in here. I'm like, yeah, he was talking about me. So, he sat me down and basically broke down certain things of the case that I should look forward to, as far as like the picking the jury, the opening arguments, and things like that. Which are the Merlin rules, to see what you was charged with, and read the jury instructions to make sure that it was explained properly and stuff like that. So I'm like, okay. He was like, man, I just want to tell you something. I'm like, what? He was like, while you studying your case and you worrying about how to get out of prison and stuff like that, remember this while you're in prison, because it's a lot of things that's going to happen in here, and I don't want you to get caught up. So I'm like, okay, so what do you want me to remember? He says, and the crazy part about it, this is like a proverb. This is something that I hold so dear to my heart. And it's so crazy that I had met the dude 10 years later after he told me that. I asked him, did he remember telling me that? He was like, man, I don't even remember telling you that, but the fact that you still remember it mean a lot to me. He was like, man, don't hold the stuff that mean the most to you at the mercy of something that mean nothing to you. And I was like, okay. He said, you understand what I mean? I'm like, I mean, I
That's
get it.
pretty deep.
Yeah, I was like, man, I'm 18 at the time. So I'm like, I mean, I think I know what you mean. He was like, I'm going to tell you what I mean because I don't want you to think about it. He said, you got a lot of family at home that love you. You got a lot of things at home you need to do. You young, you don't have no kids yet. It's a whole lot of things that mean a lot to you, and I know they do, and I just met you. But the mere fact that you just came in here and you came to the library, there's a lot of things that mean a lot to you. Don't hold that at the mercy of an argument, of a silly dispute, wasting time, doing frivolous things, just backtracking. He said that is something slight. That don't even compare to all of those other things that I mentioned. So don't hold the things that mean the most to you at the mercy of something that means nothing. And I was like, man, you know what? You absolutely right. So when it came to certain investments or certain money, I'm not going to buy that. I need to put this towards my transcripts. I need to pay this dude because I need him to explain to me what this part of the transcripts mean. So as
can we back up some? Because I've been writing down a couple of questions. So I'm looking preoccupied because I've been writing down my questions. So the very first thing that, if it's okay, can I ask you a couple of questions?
Sure.
Okay. So the first one is, what is your interpretation back then and now when they say a jury of your peers?
Oh, I'm glad you asked that question.
Of course.
Back then, I'm thinking, okay, a jury of my peers, this is going to be people from my area, maybe the Landover area, or this going to be people close to my age range, you know what I'm saying? Something like that. Or these going to be people that look like me, so to speak. Somebody who got some type of understanding of where I come from and what could possibly be going on with me before they pass this judgment. But when you go in a courtroom, it's the exact opposite. Everybody that was my age was dismissed out of court. Everybody that may have had an understanding of what I was going through was stricken from the jury. It was one female, she actually stood up and they was like, how old are you? She's like, I'm 18. She's like, do you know the defendant? She was like, yeah, I went to school with him, but I don't know. Like, oh yeah, you can't be in the jury. So I looked at my lawyer like, man, this is the perfect definition of a jury of your peers. She went to school with me. We never talked. I couldn't even remember her face, but she recognized me. They just struck her out the jury. Everybody that was in my jury was 50 or 60 years old.
So what do you think about a jury of your peers now? Like, what does that mean to you now? Because you didn't know back then, because like, even I didn't know. You know what I mean? So now your education.
Now I think that need to be redefined as a jury of the unknown or something of that, because using the word peer is really not a good word in that sense, because what makes a person a peer? What makes you a peer to me or to you or anybody who's sitting in that defendant chair or any chair? What makes you a peer?
So let me ask you this other question. So it's two questions. So when you first lost that trial, like when they first said, we found you guilty, blah, 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 how did you feel?
When they initially found me guilty, the first thing, all right, and I'm gonna tell a little secret. I know my mother watched. I know she was smiling looking at this. One of the things about me is when I was growing up, I was kind of sort of a crybaby a little bit. So to break myself out of that, I just started smiling through all my emotions. And it became a bad habit as I get older. So now when I'm irritated, I smile. When I'm mad, I smile. I got a smile for every different thing. But people who know me, they know the smiles. So when I lost trial, I smiled. I looked back at my mother like, man, we're going to be all right. And I walked out the courtroom. I walked out the courtroom. When I got back to the jail, this older dude, when I got back to the jail, I remember like it was yesterday, I was in the Sally Port. This older dude was like, come on, man, I know you got some good news. What happened? And I couldn't even open my lips to say that I lost. Like, only thing that came out of my mouth was I just kept saying I. He's like, man, just go ahead and lay down. Just go ahead and lay down. I went in the cell and laid back. I was like, man, I can't believe I lost this trial. I really couldn't believe it.
So how many months later was it for sentencing?
As
a 16, were you still 16 at the time, or were you 17?
So I'm 18 now.
Okay, got it. Okay.
I had 2 birthdays in jail.
Okay.
I went to trial in April and got sentenced in July. And by August, I was in the maximum security jail in Cumberland.
But it took them 2 years to take you to trial, but 2 months to convict you?
Right. That's all it took.
Okay, I just want to make sure
I
had it right.
Not 2 months to convict me. Not 2 months to. It took them 3 days. My trial was 3 days. It took them 3 days to convict me.
Wait, huh?
Yeah, my trial was 3 days. I went to trial. I had a 3-day trial.
So wait a minute. Let me just, because I'm a little slow tonight. I don't want to lie upon these folks. So it took them 2 years to give you a trial, and it took them 3 days to sentence you to life.
Yeah. No, it took them 3 days to find me guilty.
Okay.
And then I went back to court for sentencing in July.
So how many months later was that?
That's what? May, June, 3 months later.
Okay, so it took them 3 months to give you life in jail, but it took them 2 years to get you to trial.
Right.
So Roland, real quick. So why do you think it took them that long? Why do you think it took them 2 years to? Is it because they was trying to wait till he was 18, or?
No, because they can do whatever they want to do.
Oop. Yeah. Well. Yeah. There you go. Yeah. Well.
Pretty much. If you don't have no funding behind you, that's one of the biggest things. If you don't have no funding behind you, even though Brother DaMarqus said they put up $25,000, that's for them. That's not enough. You know, they looking at it from a point of view of more. You know, but that's what this system is based off of. It's based off of the haves and the have-nots.
And to add to that, the crazy part, and I won't mention his name, but the crazy part before I had hired the attorney that I went to trial with, I called another attorney. I called the attorney and I said, man, how much you will charge to represent me for my case? He said, what are you charged with? I said, I'm charged with first-degree murder. He said, all right, well, bring me $80,000 and I'll walk you out the door. I said, just like that? He said, yeah. He said, bring me $80,000 and you won't have no case. I said, you ain't even looking to the case yet. He said, I don't have to. Just bring me $80,000.
Wow.
Say, man. Some people got it like that.
but that 80,000 didn't work for me. They wanted my black ass. It didn't work for me.
I've heard that during my time, coming up and dealing with the court system myself. I've heard that same story. And you can give them all that money. they walking you back into the jail is where they're walking you to. They're going to tell you anything you want to hear. But when you're talking about dealing with some straight up, some K Street type lawyers, or you're going to get the best defense that your money, if you're putting up that type of money. But if somebody is telling you, hey, man, you give me $80,000 walking you out the door, because even a K Street lawyer who is dynamite, he not going to tell you nothing like that.
Right.
Well, when did it actually? So you went back to the jail, and the man asked, okay, what happened? You was like, and he was like, dude, just go lay down. How long did it take for it to really sink in that, wait a minute, I'm not going home?
And that's the thing, and that's the problem. I think that's the real serious problem that I have, because sometimes I don't allow myself to fall in negative thoughts. So I could never sit in the thought of, you ain't never coming home. Like, even when I be like, damn, man, my life about to be like this for the next 20 years, the next 30 years, because like when I got to prison, everybody who I walked and talked to had 30 years in, 20 years in. One of the brothers that I used to talk to all the time, that man was locked up. That man got locked up when Martin Luther King was alive. He was walking around on a cane, talking to me. There was people on death row talking to me. Like, everybody I was talking to was incarcerated before 10 years before I was even born. So I'm like, sometimes I done went in the cell like, dang, if that's gonna be me 20 years later talking to that 18-year-old, 30 years later, been locked up 40 years, talking to this 18-year-old about, you gotta get home, like, what you doing? You gotta get yourself together. Y'all young is crazy out there. I done had thoughts like that, but I just never allowed myself to sit in it. And I think that was just having faith. Like, I never thought that I was gonna be in prison for no 85 years, or even with 85 years. This is another thing, just to let the people know. When you are sentenced to natural life in prison, you can go off of parole after you have served 15 years in. And then determine on the parole hearing, you go off for parole anytime that they say, or they can say, I don't want to see you no more. When you are sentenced to a number, right, it's a life suspended number or any number, you don't go for parole until you have half of your time in.
Oh,
so
wow.
Me having 85 life suspended with 85 years, I wasn't eligible for parole until I actually served 44 and a half years day for day.
And then you
42 and a half years day for day.
And then you don't qualify for any programs because you're considered as a lifer.
So So it's a double whammy.
Wait a minute, wait.
The program. That's how the state of Maryland gets you. They give you a life suspended number. So now you are technically a lifer because you have life in your sentence. Mm-hmm. And then you can't go for parole until you have half of that number in. So now you basically just being warehoused in prison because you're not allowed for no programs because you are a lifer unless they make some type of exceptions to the rule, and you can't go for parole until you have half of your sentencing.
So do you think that they're sentencing purposely like that then? Instead of saying life without parole, they're intentionally sentencing with a number on it to at least make folks do half of that time?
I definitely think that they sentencing you purposely like that, because why give a person a life suspended with 85 years? You just give them 85 years so they don't have to be considered a life, and they can at least do something while they're in there.
Yeah, because you can't charge I guess young people, what do they call it? They can't give you life with no parole.
Right, with no parole, right.
Or something like that.
Okay.
So they flip it and say, well, we giving you 85 years. We could have gave you life with no parole, but
it's really the same thing, but okay.
It's the same thing. It's literally the same thing.
So, wow. I had a question.
Mm-hmm.
So when they took you to jail, did they talk to you without your parents present because you were a juvenile?
It's so crazy because that's one of my issues. That's one of the issues that I raised that the Court of Appeals denied. Not only did they talk to me without my parents, they talked to me without my parents being there, and they also talked to me in a room where they said that the camera was broke to surveil it. But it really wasn't broke. That just was a tactic that because they whooped me bad when I got in the interrogation room. They whooped me bad in there, but
they beat you up, you mean?
They beat the brakes off me in that room.
Oh my God.
But there's no surveillance of it because the camera didn't work. So when I raised certain issues as to certain conversation they was having, like, just tell me what happened, we just gonna get you on the job corps. Certain things that violate Miranda versus Arizona. We know Miranda versus Arizona is the case that we use for the Fifth Amendment, the right to remain silent. And we know that case, along with that case, we know that you don't have to say anything, or when they ask you anything in regards to you being silent or intimidate you for being silent, that's a violation of your Miranda rights where the case is supposed to be dropped. But what they do, they remove the camera or say the camera is broke so they don't have to turn over that evidence. So when I raised certain issues, it was like, where's your proof?
Okay. So did you go to a juvenile detention center or it was an adult facility at that
I
time?
went to the adult facility, but I was on the juvenile block.
So did y'all have communication? Did y'all cohabitate? Like, even though it was on a different block, but it was in the same building, but did y'all come out in common areas together?
Yeah, you go to like the medical center together, or you be walking the halls together with the adults and things of that nature, or certain like little events. Maybe like they might have like a graduation or something like that. They might bring people there. So you cohabitate with the adults in common area. It's not really that much time, but there are times when you're there.
Okay. Well, did you start out with a public defender, or did someone hire a private attorney for you at that time?
They assigned me a public defender, but when that public defender came in there, the first thing that he said is, all right, the first thing I'm gonna do is I'm gonna try to get you a plea because I don't know what I can do for your case. I said, don't even worry about it. You can just go ahead and leave. He's like, you sure? I'm like, yeah. He said, all right, good luck. He left out.
But you know what I found out? I mean, to cut you or Sonia off, is in Prince George's County, they have some of the best public defenders. And if I knew what I know now, I wouldn't have spent all that money on, high profile defense attorneys. But they have some of the best public defenders. But of course, I didn't know that, because we're always conditioned that public defenders are shitty, and that's not the case.
Actually, the best ones to have is the ones that's just getting out of law school because they want to make a name for themselves.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So by this time, I think I'm in the library. I'm focusing religious wise, trying to stay grounded and making sure that I remember that principle that he taught. So based upon that principle, out of the 13 and a half years that I was locked up, I didn't receive not one infraction. I didn't get in trouble. I didn't do none of that extracurriculum activity that a lot of people fall into while they are incarcerated, mainly because my main focus was getting out of prison and getting out of prison level-headed. I seen a lot of people go insane in prison. I seen a lot of people OD in prison. I seen a lot of people just lose their self, like literally lose their self, like forget their name in prison. Like come out there one day and talk to them. And that's why when Carmen was explaining her story, it wasn't shocking to me. It was like, I understand. I know that. I understand. Like that is a true thing. That is something that I'm not saying you have to be there to experience it, but when you are there and you really experience it, you really be like, wow, because it's I done seen someone come out of their cell as one person, and then a week later they are walking around the compound with their shoes off. I didn't say so. I tried my best to stay as focused as I can and to stay grounded, as much as I can. So as I was a few years go by, I'm going through my paperwork and stuff like that. I found the issue. Which in all actually got me home. I didn't know that by law, your lawyer have to file after you lose trial. By law, your lawyer have to file the motion for you to get your direct appeal, your 3-judge panel, and your modification and reconsideration of sentence. I didn't know that. My lawyer filed for the direct appeal, but he left those other things out. So I just wrote my judge randomly just to see if he would respond. Asking like, man, do you know is there any modification on the record for me of anything of that nature? So he wrote back and was like, no, your lawyer didn't file one. You don't have one. So I said, well, is it too late? He was like, no. He was like, yeah, it's too late. And you can't use this as this letter as a modification form. So I'm like, dang. So I went back to the library and I found this case called Matthews versus State. Matthews versus State taught me that by law, the only way your lawyer can get out of filing for that modification, he have to bring you in court on the record, and the judge must question you and ask you, do you fully understand what you're asking your lawyer not to do? But that must be in court on the record that he have to say no. I mean, that I have to say, no, I didn't want him to file that. That have to be in court on the record. So I'm like, okay, boom, I can add this to the list of other issues that I have. I filed my modification in 2000. I filed my post-conviction in 2014. I didn't go for my post-conviction hearing until 2018.
Mhm.
So I spent 4 years waiting for that court date. I spent 4 years waiting on that court. And in that 4 years, I done been sick, had to get 2 blood transfusions, almost died in the jail because of their poor care and they misdiagnosis. I done went from 190 pounds to 106 pounds in 30 days while I was in
God.
From a misdiagnosis. All this was taking place while I was waiting. So now I'm laying in a hospital bed in the infirmary. I woke up out my sleep because I heard this dude keep screaming. He just keeps screaming and grabbing the air. And then he just died. He just flatlined right in the same ward with me. So now I'm thinking to myself, like, I can't even sleep now. I'm like, dang, I got 0.1 ounce of blood in my whole body. My chest hurting because my heart beating too fast, trying to pump that little bit of blood through my body. They dying in the ward. I'm sitting here with 85 years. I'm like, man, this can't be it. This can't be the end right here. This can't be the end. They rush me out. They give me the first blood transfusion. I get back on the compound. I pass out again. They give me another blood transfusion. By the time I get back settled, like, to myself, around like 2016, this when a public defender 17, a public defender had reached out to me and was like, all right, I just got your case, blah, 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 we're about to start working, whatever the case may be. So I hid 2 issues from him just to see if he was going to do his work. So he came and saw me. I asked, okay, did you look over my case? He was like, yeah. Now by this time, I'm equipped enough legally that when now I can question him to see if he's going to do his job or not. Is he doing your job, or you bombarded by the system where you got 1,000 cases and I'm just a name on your desk? Because I respect that. I understand that you got to do your job and they're going to give you whatever case you're going to get. So I'm like, did you look over the case? He like, yeah. So I'm like, okay, so what did you find? He said, honestly, you did a good job. All I found was what you had. I said, you didn't see nothing else? He like, no. So I gave him the modification issue. So I'm like, how you ain't see that? He like, oh man, I ain't even looked that far. I said, don't worry about it. But what I need you to do, I need you to go in this courtroom and represent me as if it was you sitting right here. I said, can you handle that? He said, I can handle that. I said, I don't want you to look at nothing else. Just read over what I got, because all of my stuff pro se. Just read over what I got. Read over it, study it as if it's your own. You don't need to study nothing else. Just study what I gave you and represent me as if it is you. So we get in the courtroom. Of course, me being irritating. Every time he don't say something, pull him. Come here right quick. Pull him down. Look, read this.
Wow.
Say this. No, say this. Like, don't say. I know I was getting on his nerve. Say this. Don't say this. No, I don't want you to say that. I don't want you to use that angle. I want you to use this angle. I need you to argue it like this. So he like, all right. So he going in, whatever the case may be. So I'm like, all right, you did good. I was satisfied with you doing what I told you to do. So a couple months later, I get my motion back. Everything denied except for the modification issue. So we look at the silver line. Okay, boom. I still got hope. It ain't over yet. It's not over. I hired this lawyer. Her name was Maria Fiorentino. This is probably the most best lawyer I ever bumped into, period. And I talked to a lot of them. We talked to her on the phone. Before she even got $1, she had my whole modification typed up and sent to me. And then she came and saw me that week. I'm talking about, she was like, we're going to go in the courtroom and do this. You was 16 when the high, we're going to argue the juvenile. Are you familiar with the juvenile issue? I said, yeah, I'm familiar with it. We're going to argue that. This how I'm going to argue. I said, excuse me. She said, yeah. I said, I didn't even hire you yet. She said, I hired myself. You're not going nowhere.
Wow.
I ain't even hired you yet. She said, I hired myself. I'm not letting this case go because I like the fact that you somebody that I can argue for. So I'm like, okay, man, she went in that courtroom and she argued like I came out of her. Like that was my mother. Like she really sat there and argued for me to the point where the judge was like, you know, actually, I don't feel like I need to do nothing else for you because I was generous enough by giving you 85 years instead of life but 20. She was like, why do you think that was generous? He was 16 years old. Would you give your 16-year-old 85 years or life 20? Where's the generosity at?
Woo!
I'm talking about like, I started to catch like, man, you got to calm down before you get me out of here before he changed that 85 to only 84. And then we looking crazy. So she, you know, she did her thing. I got up there and talked. He ended up reducing my sentence from 85 years to life suspended with 85 years to life suspended over 30 years. The life suspended over 30 years. So that right there, by this time I got like 12 years in with like 5 years worth of good time or 4 years worth of good time. So that put me up immediately for parole. But by the time I went up for parole, COVID happened. COVID came. So now COVID come, it's pushing everything back, whatever the case may be. COVID happened March. COVID shut the jail down March 2020. March 2020. Matter of fact, I remember exactly, it was March 17th because March 19th, my mother, my father, and my aunt was supposed to come and see me and my little cousin, which was my cell buddy. But that's another story. That's another story, but they were supposed to come and saw us the 19th. So March 17th, they shut the jail down. So I ended up losing my father June 2020. Now, the thing about that, which kind of like reassured me, I had this thing with the date June 4th, right? June 4th, a lot of crazy stuff that happened to me, especially when it's Thursday and especially when it rains. So I get real little antsy around that time. My father had a heart attack May 30th. And he ended up slipping into a coma. So as the days progressed, the bad whispers coming to my mind, like, man, I know he's not gonna go on June 4th. Like that can't be it. And he's not about to be able to see me come home. We did all this fighting, all these years. And this my whole strength, right? He's not about to be able to see me come home. So June 3rd, I'm on the phone with my mother. We called the hospital. He's still all right. I think they pulled the plug on the 2nd. No, on one of them days they pulled the plug. So June 3rd, we called, he was all right. June 4th at night, my mother like, all right, come on, let's call up there. My heart beating fast. I'm like, man, I do not want to be on the phone and hear this. So we call, the nurse like, he all right, he back there snoring. So we bust out laughing. Like, okay. So I go to sleep that night and I had a dream, man. And the dream just, when I woke up that morning, it was like, all right, I already know. So in a dream, it's like I was the age that I am now. And all my siblings and little cousins was young. And we was on vacation. That's something my family, we like to go on vacation. We was on vacation. I went in the bathroom in the dream and came out and it was clothes and suitcases everywhere, but wasn't nobody in the room. It was just a big mess everywhere. So I get to putting the clothes and stuff in the suitcase. I'm like, man, why would they leave out and leave this mess everywhere and not pick this stuff up and just leave all of this right here for me? My father come in the room in the dream. He like, why your face like that? I said, cuz I'm trying to figure out why would everybody leave and leave all these clothes right here? He said, but what are you complaining for? You know what you gotta do, right? I'm like, yeah, clean the mess up. He said, so you got it? I'm like, yeah. He said, all right, you sure you got it? I'm like, yeah, I got it. He's like, all right, he walked out the door, closed the door. Woke up the next day, he was gone. So I'm smiling like, man, that's probably was the last important piece of wisdom that he left me with before departing. So I'm like, all right, you know what? I'm gonna stop worrying, everything gonna be all right. I go for parole in November that year. Parole give me a 5-year hit after telling me you did everything in prison. Prison has nothing more to offer you. I don't have no recommendations for you to do anything else. You did everything. So we see you in 5 years. So I said, if I did everything and prison has nothing more to offer me, why do you still want me to sit in prison for 5 years? He's like, because the nature of your crime. I said, the nature of my crime is never going to change. It's not going to change now. It's not going to change in 2 years. It's not going to change 3 or 5 years. So what's the difference? They just clicked off the screen. I said, man, nope, it ain't over. I don't care. Went back, thought about some stuff. An older dude said, man, file for the 8505. So I'm like, you sure? He said, yeah, filed it. I said, all right, we put it together. I filed it. I filed it in December. I wrote my judge a letter like, listen, I understand you feel as though that you was generous enough to take my time from 85 years to 30 years, but that's not good for me. I need to be home now. This is going on in my family. This need to happen. I need to be there. He said, you know what? I'm gonna give you a court date. So I'm like, all right, okay, now we getting somewhere. Now we getting somewhere. The court date ain't till August 2021. Ain't till August 2021. I go to court August 21 for the 8505. While we discussing the hearing, while we about to start for the hearing, the victim in my case family was allowed to speak in my hearing. They spoke in the hearing. The judge said, man, this basically this hearing went all over the place. I'm denying you, and clicked off the screen. And then the next week later, he put me into the PG County Reentry Court. Put me in the PG County Reentry Court. So that right there it allowed me to get out the door. And then the next blessing after that was a phone call. I got a phone call. Listen, man, I need you to call somebody for me and explain to her about the reentry team. So I'm like, who am I calling? Like her name Carmen. So I called her. We talking, explaining about the team. She like, dude, who is you? She's like, who are you? So I was just,
how old are you again?
Right.
You know more than me. Women. I ain't never heard of this.
Yeah, so I was just explaining certain things about the program, man. You know, I was blessed with being a part of y'all board. But the journey in itself, man. The one thing I want a lot of people to understand and learn is it's another quote that I learned when I was in prison by James Allen, and how he said circumstances doesn't make you. They just reveal you to yourself. They just reveal to you who you are. And those circumstances just told me that it just told me what type of man that I really am. How I know what I'm willing to do, what I'm not willing to do. I know who I am and who I'm not. And I'm confident in that. And I'm comfortable with that. Because I done been around the worst of the worst, the best of the best, all of the master manipulators. I done been around it, I done seen it, and it didn't even faze me. It didn't faze me. I didn't spend 13 and a half years not getting in trouble because nothing was going on around me. But I knew how to navigate through that mess.
Well, tell them what the judge said about you not getting in trouble the whole 13 years or so.
Right. That's the thing. And that's another reason why I love my lawyer, because the judge was like, you know, you spent 13 years in jail not getting in trouble only because you had life. Had you showed the time, you would have gotten a whole lot of trouble. But I don't think that is a high thing. I think the only reason why you didn't get in trouble is how much time you got. So my lawyer was like, Your Honor, that's kind of contradictory.
That don't make sense. Right.
Yeah, you ridiculing him for not getting in trouble and saying he would have been getting in more trouble if you would have gave him lesser time. But I'm sitting right here holding a letter to you from the warden of a program that he put together to stop violence in the jail. I'm sitting here with letters from sergeants and gang intel about them waking that man up 2-3 o'clock in the morning to stop violence in the jail that they couldn't stop themselves. So what do they got to do with him not getting in trouble? He like, I'm just saying, I just think he just stayed out of trouble because he got a life. Like, I was like, man, so you telling me if it would have been better if I would have came in front of you with a rap sheet full of jailhouse tickets opposed to a clean slate?
Wow.
Well, so then when he went home that night and took his shower and went to bed, he got up that morning, brushed his teeth, and the first person he saw was your face in the mirror. And he was like, I just assumed, he was like, let me go ahead and do the right thing and move this young brother's case on over to reentry.
Right.
That's number one that I want to say. And the other thing, I want to go back to when Sonia asked you a question about were your parents present. that's even here it is in 2022, attorneys, even defense attorneys will tell parents, here it is, the child is 14, 15, 16, 17 years old, and say, well, you can't be in the room when I talk to your child. Well, my child is a child. The brain don't mature to a man to 26 and a female to 25. So, and a lot of parents, most of the parents will not go in the room with their child. And then, and I've had arguments with people and they say, well, I don't want to contradict or hurt my child's case or whatever. I don't care. I'm going in that room with that attorney with my child. Can't nobody tell me that I can't go in there because my child is a child.
Right.
And the sad part about it, they didn't even tell my mother and father where I was.
Oh,
wow.
Yeah. I heard about that.
When they came and got me out the house, they didn't tell them where they was taking me. When they called the precinct, they ain't tell them I was there. They kept saying, I don't know. He's not in the system yet. Whole time I'm in the back getting a boot put on my neck.
Wow.
They ain't even tell them where I was.
You guys know that back in June, the Supreme Court limited the ability to enforce Miranda rights. Did you guys know about that?
Mm-hmm.
So back in June of this year.
Mm-hmm.
So now, even if like they roughed you up or whooped you and all that stuff, and they say, hey man, and they never read you your Miranda rights. And even if they did, they done put a limit on how you can enforce Miranda reading. They completely want to do away with them. And that's because right now you have a Supreme Court that leans so far to the right that they're ready to get rid of Miranda rights.
And you know what's crazy? In 2006, they had just passed a law about the two-step police tactic that violate the Miranda rule, which is when it said by law, the police only have a right to ask you basically what's on your ID, your name, your address, and stuff like that. Without Miranda, anything else or anything involving a crime, they're supposed to Mirandize you. So what the police used to do is they'd, stop you outside or lock you up and say, oh, I know you had something to do with such and such. Or I know you know something about such and such. According to the Court of Appeals out of 2006, that was called a violation of Miranda. Even if you say, I did this or I did that. Okay, well, let's Mirandize you now and then tell me again on the record. That was all negated. And now they didn't pass that law. They really trying to do away with the rights of the people.
Wow. Real quick, we got a couple of comments in the chat. So shout out to the people in the chat. Ebony Hustle said, a great talk, very informative. And then Barry Carey says, I'm so proud of you for maintaining your sanity throughout this ordeal and for pioneering this pathway for others at such a stellar level. And then Brother Derek Bay asked, what was the charge?
First degree murder.
Okay.
So DaMarqus made a comment about he's seen some of the worst while he was in there, and I say that too. And of course, everybody know that I'm not Democrat or Republican. And I read one of Donald Trump's books a long time ago, and he said, if you want to know a man's character, give him a little money. And so my motto is, if you want to know a man's true character, put him in jail.
Wow.
And, I've seen, women come to jail as women and they turn into little children. I've seen women come to jail and turn into, men. They turn into men right before you. I've seen women come into jail and turn into like they are consumed with fear. And I was at a prison camp, so I can imagine what DaMarqus, some of the things that you've seen. But for me, you want to know a man's true character, send him to jail. Some of them turn into true monsters.
Yeah, I think I done seen it firsthand. I done seen some of the most unmorally things that men do in prison. I'm talking about, I done seen I just seen dudes in prison selling their body for drugs. I didn't watch older dudes manipulate younger dudes to do certain things, to get drugs, to get the older dude high, and then once he got high, he stabbed the younger dude.
Dang. You have well, I'm sorry, go ahead.
I about to say I done seen so much of that crazy stuff. I didn't seen it. I didn't stopped it before. I didn't had to been in the middle of it before. Like, it's so much stuff that memory wise that I leave. I don't say I leave it behind in there, but I just leave it somewhere tucked away in my brain because it's pointless out here. Like, it's useless even thinking about that type of stuff out here, but it's just so many traumatic things that you just witness on a day, because you gotta think of it. Most people, a lot of people in prison, especially in the maximum security jail, they think they not never going nowhere. A lot of them succumb to the fact that they may not never go home. So they living life on the edge every single day. It's no principles, it's no morals. They just ready to risk it all at the argument of a microwave, the argument of a TV show, for the phone. They just ready to, it's what we say in prison is this. We say that these are individuals that want to commit suicide, but they don't want to do it themselves. They want somebody else to do it for them. They want somebody else to do it for them. I done seen that. I done seen plenty of suicide attempts. Man. It's a lot of stuff that take place in those. I done seen the police argue with a dude that was about to go home in 6 months. He was about to go home in 6 months. And he had an argument with the police about like passing a new, you're not supposed to do that in prison. You're not supposed to go to one cell, get something, and take it to another cell and give it to them, unless the police give you permission. You're not supposed to do that. I seen the police argue with somebody over that had 6 months left, and they took him out of his cell and put him in a cell with somebody that had 3 jailhouse murders. And you know what happened? He ain't never been home. He ain't never been home.
Wow, you have a question from Kung CJ. Did anyone speak on your behalf at sentencing?
At the sentencing, actually, when I went for sentencing, my lawyer advised, I don't know why, but my lawyer advised for me not to say nothing or for nobody to speak on my behalf. The only person that talked on my behalf of my sentencing was my lawyer.
Wow.
Did you ask your attorney why? Because I know, well, Sonia, did you guys have to fight my attorney to get the courtroom packed and jammed and get those 20-something people to speak, or was he against it, or what was the?
He was against an amount of people that wanted to speak, so he did try to limit it to a smaller portion of people to speaking instead of people just coming up randomly speaking, which was ridiculous because, we're paying these people, so we're not on their time. So if we had 100 people to speak, it should have been allowed. But unfortunately, he was trying to say, well, I'll let, a few people speak. He didn't even want like both of your parents to speak. He's like, you got to pick one. No, we shouldn't have to pick,
right.
And, I hate to go back real quick, but, when you were saying about exactly what happened and how you got into that situation in the first place, the same story just happened like on Friday here locally. And I get inside news information, because I know people from the news station, but basically the same exact situation that you was in just happened on Friday. And one where a female was arguing with the guy and she didn't want him to leave the house. So she wanted to call her brother, look, you need to come handle this. He's trying to get away from her because he don't want to deal with her anymore. Her brother comes and shoots him. And when the police and everybody got there, the boyfriend is deceased and the brother is on the run. The brother had nothing to do with it. He came and jumped into a situation where he had no clue what was going on. And that I see that a lot lately where you have people getting you, okay, let me call Bobo, let me call John and come handle this. And then they get caught up in something they had no clue what was going on, and then you get caught in the mix of it, and this is what happened. So, you know, it's a sad story, and when you wet behind the ears, you don't know any better. But, you know, I hate that what happened to you happened. But as a juvenile, your rights were clearly violated. And dealing with Maryland law, which I did when I was helping out with my sister's case, I seen, you know, I would have never known how bad it was until I had to go through it with her. And it's so many corrupt attorneys working together with the prosecutors. They've already sat down and discussed the case way before you were sitting there. I'm surprised they didn't ask you, did you want a plea deal? But at the end of the day, they really did violate your rights because you weren't a minor. How can you make, you know, allow them to bring you in there and not allow your parents to be in it? That didn't make sense to me.
Because they say that the parents could ultimately be called to the stand by the prosecutor, and then they would have to speak against their child or something to that effect. And so I still stand by, you know, bullshit. Like, I'm going in that room with
I mean, you clearly you couldn't vote. Clearly you couldn't smoke. Clearly you couldn't drink. You know, you not legally anyway, but you legally to sit in a court in a police department by yourself at the underage 18. That don't make sense to me.
And I'm gonna tell you what, I forgot, I left one detail. I'm gonna tell you something else that $20,000 got me, right? I'm gonna tell you something else. So, mind you, the prosecution presented their case, they rested their case. So when it was time for me to present my case, before we even started, the prosecution motioned to strike for all of my witnesses. For every last one of bit of witness I had. And the reason why he struck them witnesses is because my lawyer never turned over the list for the witnesses to testify on my behalf.
Oh, God.
So my judge was like, how did you do that? He said, well, Your Honor, you know, there's a couple of them I couldn't get in contact with. I wasn't sure about some of them, but I'm sure about all of them now, so let's just proceed. The judge like, no, we can't do that. And I'm sorry to your defendant because now he don't have no case to support.
I had him fired right on the spot for not doing his job. And that would have been a mistrial right there.
But the thing is, this was the judge said out his mouth. The judge said, for your client, I want to declare this a mistrial and do this whole thing over. But the state asked to strike. And I want to honor his behalf because he the one that said the motion. He said, but I know this case gonna get overturned on appeal because there's no way he have an effective assistance of counsel if he don't even have no witnesses. He don't have no defense. Man, I sent that same issue along with that part of my transcripts to the Court of Appeals.
And that made no difference, basically.
No difference whatsoever. That lady wrote back, that lady judged on that issue, and she says, this issue is not for my courts to determine. I will push it over to a higher court. She didn't say no. She said, I ain't answering them.
You would have thought they would have sent it back to the lower courts for, just like I said, to redo the case all over again. No, because you didn't have a fair trial.
Well, sorry, we went through that. Well, yeah. So,
Carmen,
yes, sir.
Do you remember when right before you went to trial and all of that stuff, and I used to tell you about an attorney and what that word means etymology wise?
Turn your ass in.
If you look the word up in etymology, the root word is attorn, and then you get the word attorney. But the word attorn is a verb, and this is what it means. It says to turn over to another. Yeah. And we always talked about, the other thing that we used to talk about is the first duty of an attorney is to what? Their allegiance is to what? The court.
To the court. Yeah.
It's to the court first, and then to somebody else, and then to the person that they representing.
Yeah.
That's one thing about that's the only thing when I really start understanding the law a little bit and reading over my case, I used to get headaches. I used to be popping Tylenol like it was candy. That's like, for example, it's a rule in Maryland called the witness advocate rule. The witness advocate rule is a rule that's solely for the state's attorney. What it is that The state's attorney, as an officer of a court, he is held to a certain prestige, whereas though he cannot overstep those bounds in the courtroom because he's already held as someone who is telling the truth. So he cannot exaggerate it. My prosecutor had his closing arguments. The first thing he said in his mouth, he said, "Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, I don't need no witnesses for this case. I don't need nobody to tell me how this case happened. I know how this case happened. I know exactly how this case happened, and this is how it happened."
Wow.
And he picked the weapons up in the courtroom and acted out how the crime scene happened and told the jury, this is how the crime happened. There was no testimony as to what happened out there. I raised that in the Court of Appeal. They looked at me like I was crazy, like I was like this not there. This is y'all rules. He is not supposed to do this word for word. The jury already looking at me like I'm guilty until proven innocent. We already understand that. And he's up there telling them this is how the murder happened. How can you say that? There's no evidence to support that. And you know you wasn't there. You are not an eyewitness.
Right.
Or you an expert witness. But that's what he said in the courtroom.
It's just unbelievable that, I mean, I know you lived it. It's just, you know, for us hearing this, it's hard to digest. I'm just gonna be honest. It's really, really hard to digest, and it's very, very scary. But you know, thank you for sharing your story. It's extremely, extremely important, and just the amount of discipline that you had to have in order to keep pushing through to get yourself out. That says a lot. It really, really does, because you could have easily just chopped it up and said, oh, well, you know, this is the way it is, and went on and let your consciousness become institutionalized, if that makes sense. Right. So that really says a lot about your soul / character, that you were determined that you were not going to place that label, that ultimately becomes a curse on your back. So, wow. Okay, let me get myself together before I get to getting emotional. So I know we only have 4 minutes, so I'm just gonna go around to the team and, you know, see if you all have any last words for Brother Demarcus. Tamika, do you have any last words you would like to share?
Gotta take myself off mute. These children are loud. But I just want to say, Demarcus, thank you. Thank you for being transparent and sharing your story. Not a lot of people have the courage to do that. And you are just a phenomenal man that is out here to change the world that he lives in. I didn't know about the part where you came up with a program to decrease violence on the inside of the walls. That is phenomenal. They should have paid you for that, by the way.
They paid me, all right. They paid me no mind.
So, are phenomenal. I'm just honored to be in the midst of your presence. And I appreciate you being here and sharing your story. And I pass the mic. I appreciate you, brother.
All right. Sonia, did you have any last words?
Well, I really enjoyed your story. And this is one of the reasons why I hate criminal justice, because it's really sad how we get caught up and we have no clue how to get out the situation, but you took the initiative to fight for your life. And that should be applauded within itself. And another thing is you coming up with programs in the jail, doing someone else's job, like the guards, the wardens, the politicians, and cleaning this mess up. But I applaud you for it. And I hope that you continue to mentor, these young guys that's out there in your area and just giving them a heads up of the pros and cons of doing right and doing wrong. You know what I mean? And I really do appreciate your story.
Thank you.
It's funny because, well, it's not funny, but I think DaMarqus had called me like a third time, and I just, it wasn't that I forget about you, but I was like, I be so busy. Y'all all know how busy I be. And I think like that third time, he was like, this is DaMarqus. And I'm like, I need you on the board. I need you, da, 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 da. These youth need you. They done lost their minds out here, da, 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 da. And so for me, seeing that vision of you being so young and you will be a beacon for the youth is very important. And Tamika is putting together 3 or 4 different campaigns for the 11th and 12th graders at this high school that we partnered with a young brother. His name is also Josh, not Josh from 2 weeks ago, but it's another Josh. And he's just an amazing young man. And he started his own volunteer nonprofit at the school. And so I can't wait till you guys get to meet. And so we can, really get out there in the community and make a difference for our future, which is our youth. And so once again, I am honored that you accepted to sit on our board and to make a difference. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. And last but not least, Sir Roland.
Only thing I'm going to say, the ladies put it all there. There's nothing else for me to say. The only thing that I'm saying to you, man to man, is that I'm proud that you are representing yourself as a man and an upright man, and continue to do that. Thank you. We appreciate you.
Thank you.
Thanks for being on the board.
Oh, wow. This was, it's very, very heartfelt. And you got me on that little last part, Roland. You got me. You got me on it. You taking me over the edge. So, we want to thank everyone. Of course, let's give our brother DaMarqus just a round of applause. Woo! Just, oh my God. Thank you so much, brother. Just much love and respect. Thank you for sharing your experience and the work that you're putting in. We appreciate you so much. We do want to thank our YouTube audience that's watching. Also thank the people in the chat. We appreciate your participation as well. Just a reminder that the book, Pretense of Justice, it is out. You can get it on Amazon. Tamika is holding up a hard copy. It comes in a few versions, 2 hard copy, 1 color, 1 not color, and then paperback. And then also, Tamika, can you put that back up, the Helping Ourselves to Transform? That is our nonprofit organization. All proceeds from the sale of the book, Pretense of Justice, is going to the organization Helping Ourselves to Transform. So you can please pick up a copy at Amazon. I'm going to tell y'all something. Ooh, child. It's taken me it's taken me a long time to get through it, and it's not because it's not a good read. It's actually an excellent read. I could have been done with it, but I get so emotional because I cannot believe what she went through. And the last time I text you on this, Sis Carmen, I haven't picked it back up because I cried for literally an hour. So another experience. I highly encourage you all to pick a copy up of Dr. Carmen's book, Pretense of Justice, so you can get her experience, her story as well. So we do want to thank everyone. Again, I want to thank Brother DaMarqus. We're so proud of you, brother. Thank you for sharing your story with the family. Okay. So don't forget, fam. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
I'm sorry. So, Tamika, real quick, let everyone know the little 12th grader named Josh Garber. So what are some of the campaigns that you're putting together for the 10th, 11th, and 12th graders at his school?
So it's kind of in the infancy stage. One of the things that I like to do is have them identify some of the issues that are going on. You know, what are the issues that are happening in your school? What are some of the issues happening in your community? And then using their own creativity, but kind of giving them a blueprint, right? So yeah, that's where we're going to stand in that space. I'm thinking anti-bullying, and then of course, drugs. Drugs is a huge issue. It starts in middle school, and it gets swept under the rug. So I can't speak specifically for the school that he's going to, but I substitute teach from time to time. And I have to go back into the middle school and high school now because I'm finding out that they're smoking marijuana in the bathrooms and, you know, doing all kind of extra stuff. And I'm like, what the heck? What are y'all teachers going to do? I guess I need to come on in there because y'all not doing nothing, you know? And so empowering the students who want to be proactive in, you know, being good peers, that's where it's at right now. So I love his attitude and what he plans on doing. And we're definitely going to do some anti-bullying and anti-drug campaigns at the school.
And it will also be a campaign on financial literacy, also youth becoming entrepreneurs, and also getting youth to understand about politics and what that actually means. And that's a blueprint of what I used before my sabbatical when I had my old nonprofit. It was solely focused on our youth. So going back to the drawing board with that. And so I'm happy that we have this partnership with this high school. So glad that Tamika is on this board with her creativity, and Roland, the president of our board, and Sister Sonia, who the treasury, who keep the numbers right, and then Sister Rhonda, who makes sure we on time and this podcast is flowing correctly. So I appreciate all you guys.
All right, let's give ourselves a round of applause, and we appreciate you too, Sis Carmen. Of course, for your hard work and dedication. You know, for those of you that know her personally, you know how passionate she is and how she burns at both ends of the candlestick. So, you know, those that are on the fence about donating or, you know, linking up to get involved, don't be. She truly puts in so much work. I still don't know how she gets it done. So thank you to you as well. So
I want to say,
I'm sorry, go ahead.
We do have a donation button on our website, but for those people who have Cash App, I'm so sorry. My background is always loud, y'all. Win Love. Tell them the Cash App, Auntie. Win Love 2.
Yeah, I'll put it in the chat. So it's
$. Yes. Put that in the chat. Bang that Cash App, y'all. It's for a great cause. We trying to figure out how we gonna get all these books to these law students at Georgetown. So yeah, they're the next ones to be lawyers. We got to equip them with the information on what's happening so that they can be better lawyers. So she has a big heart. She really does. And they about to get a book. And we want to get these to as many law students and psychology students that are at these universities nationwide. So
and we're in conversation with students that are going to be prosecutors also. So I'm so excited about that. I'm like, y'all really interested in hearing my story? And they like, yeah. I'm like, this is really cool. So yeah. I'm excited about that. And then also I want everyone to know that the Pretense of Justice was published by our nonprofit, Helping Ourselves to Transform. Just to let you know.
Wow.
Not a penny goes to me. It goes to our programs. It goes to our youth. It goes to what our dream is, which is to make this America a better America and to do something about this injustice system.
Indeed. Well, thank you all so much. Thank you to the co-host, and also thank you to the YouTube family, those in the chat, and also the YouTube family watching us. Don't forget to like this video, share, and subscribe. Get it out to as many people as you can. And specifically, of course, we want you to like, share, and subscribe to all the videos, including our news updates. But this one is a special one for the youth. Yeah. If you're not going to share anything else, you need to share this one. Sit down with your youngins and watch it with them and have some serious conversations. So with that said, we will be back in a couple weeks, probably 3 weeks. You can always keep up with us again by subscribing to the channel and also hitting your notification bell. So anytime we're going live or anytime we do any type of upload/updates, you will get the notification. So I want to, again, thank Brother Demarcus for sharing his story, for being so transparent. Much love and respect to you. And I'm so glad that we've ran across paths as well. And then thank you to, of course, the rest of the team, the lovely host. And thank you, Sis Carmen, for bringing us all together. So with that said, fam, we're going to rock out with our closing. And this is Pretense of Justice, and peace to all.
Peace and love.